an 8-year-old girl was sexually assaulted by her father's brother, and the father ended up killing and dismembering his own brother. When the 8-year-old daughter came back home from her uncle's house, Rodriguez noticed her pants were soaked in blood. The little girl told him that her uncle had hurt her. Furious and out of his mind, Rodriguez immediately headed to his brother's house. As soon as his brother opened the door, Rodriguez attacked him and beat him unconscious. He then tied up his brother and tortured him. Eventually, Rodriguez grabbed an axe and dismembered his brother's body. The head, arms, legs, they were all stuffed into the suitcases, which he dumped into a lake. A few days later, hikers found the dismembered remains floating in the water. Police found Rodriguez's fingerprints on the victim, as well as blood in the trunk of his car, leading to his arrest. Rodriguez was sentenced to life in prison. What do you think about this case? Is Rodriguez a criminal or a hero? Should he be released without charges? Share your take in the comments below.
An 8-year-old boy was starved, burned, and shot with a BB gun by his mother and her boyfriend, eventually being rushed to the hospital where he tragically died. Gabriel Fernandez, a young boy from Palmdale, California, endured months of horrific treatment from his mother, Pearl Fernandez, and her boyfriend, Isoro Aguirre. A coroner's report revealed that Gabriel suffered severe physical injuries and emotional trauma, including starvation, burns, BB gun wounds, and blows to his head with heavy objects. These repeated injuries ultimately lead to his death, despite efforts made to save him at the hospital. Gabriel's teacher, Jennifer Garcia, had repeatedly contacted a child protection hotline to report his dangerous situation, but for reasons that remain unclear, social services failed to intervene. Gabriel was left in the harmful environment, and the lack of action ultimately led to the devastating outcome. In court, Aguirre was sentenced to death for first-degree murder and child endangerment, while Gabriel's mother, Pearl Fernandez, was sentenced to life in prison without parole for her role in these events. This raises the question, why didn't the child protection system step in to save Gabriel? Should the social workers and agencies involved face harsher legal consequences for their failure to act? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
We do this because we need to and have rights.
2 boys ages 10 and 12 repeatedly engaged in inappropriate actions toward a 10-year-old girl, yet the judge did not send them to juvenile detention. Instead, one boy was ordered to wear an ankle monitor but violated restrictions hundreds of times. In an abandoned house in Boynton Beach, a 10-year-old girl was repeatedly subjected to adult-like behavior by the boys. She wrote notes saying, "If I didn't comply, they would beat me." After a teacher discovered her situation and contacted the police, the boys were charged. The judge, considering their age, decided not to detain them but instead placed them on ankle monitors, alternative schooling, and counseling. Despite this, one boy lived just a few blocks away from the victim, and her family called the police 3 times, reporting violations of a restraining order and accusations of slashing their car tires. The 12-year-old boy was arrested in June, declared incompetent to stand trial in November, shot in December, and by February had committed hundreds of violations. The judge sent him to a juvenile competency restoration center, but only after months of repeated breaches. Did the justice system's leniency toward minors go too far in this case? Share your thoughts in the comments below. A man was found dead in his jail cell after being accused of taking the lives of 3 police officers. According to reports, Lance Storrs, who was being held at the Pike County Detention Center on 3 murder charges, was confirmed to have died by suicide. Storrs was arrested after a domestic situation. His wife called the police, saying he had forced her to stay inside the house. When officers arrived, his wife was already outside and explained that she managed to escape while Storrs was asleep. After ensuring his wife was safe, 4 officers returned to serve Storrs with a protective order. However, Storrs was already awake and saw the officers approaching from his window. He opened fire, taking the lives of 3 officers who were caught off guard. A witness described the scene as a war zone during an hour-long standoff before Storrs finally surrendered. He was later taken into custody, but during his incarceration, Storrs was found dead in his cell. A medical examiner's report confirmed it was suicide. Here's the question: how could a high-profile suspect, accused of killing 3 police officers, manage to take his own life under what should have been tight security? Was this a massive failure on the part of prison officials, or is there more to the story? What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. A Texas mother discovered that her 6-year-old son was repeatedly sexually assaulted on an Aldine school bus, but the bus driver failed to intervene. LaToya Stormy Monroe contacted the school about her son's missing backpack, which led officials to review the bus surveillance footage. The video revealed that an older student had repeatedly molested and assaulted the boy over several months. Despite the repeated incidents, the bus driver failed to take action, even once stopping the bus under the mistaken belief that the kids in the back were just fighting. Heartbroken, Monroe said, "As a parent, I feel like I failed my child. It hurts. I didn't protect him." Her son, who has since received medical care, still doesn't fully understand the severity of what happened, and even asked why the perpetrator couldn't be forgiven. The Aldine Independent School District issued a statement confirming that a joint investigation with Police and Child Protective Services (CPS) is underway, promising appropriate action once the investigation is complete. If the claims are true, do you think the older student should be charged as an adult? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
Seattle police!
An 80-year-old man shot and killed a woman who claimed she was pregnant, but the homeowner says he doesn't regret it.
He says, "Don't shoot me, I'm pregnant, I have a baby," and I shot her anyway.
In Long Beach, California, Tom Greer's home was broken into by a man and a woman stealing from him. When Greer confronted them, they shoved him to the ground. Despite this, he managed to grab a revolver. The intruders panicked and ran toward the back door, but Greer followed and shot the woman. She claims she was pregnant and unarmed, but Greer insists he did nothing wrong, saying he was protecting his property. The case has sparked debate. On one hand, Greer, an elderly and frail man, was defending himself after his home was invaded. On the other hand, the law states you can't shoot someone who's fleeing and no longer posing an immediate threat. Police are investigating whether Greer's actions were legally justified. What do you think? Was the 80-year-old man right to shoot a pregnant intruder? Share your thoughts. A model mother from Byron, Wyoming, turned a gun on her for children, killing 3 and critically injuring 1, before taking her own life. On February 10, 2023, Trani Ahar Seaman, often described by her neighbors as a model mother, personally called 911. Calmly, she told the dispatcher that she had shot her children and planned to take her own life. Despite the dispatcher's best efforts to keep her on the line and prevent the tragedy, the call was disconnected shortly after. Less than 10 minutes later, authorities arrived at the scene to a horrifying discovery. All 4 children ages 9, 7, and 2-year-old twins had been shot in the head. 2 were pronounced dead at the scene. One of the twins later died at the hospital, leaving the 7-year-old daughter, Olivia, as the sole survivor. Police found vague and cryptic posts on Tranier's social media accounts. Friends and family stated that while she appeared optimistic on the surface, she had recently shown signs of undisclosed mental health struggles. Experts analyzing the case identified it as a form of filicide, where a mother in extreme isolation or depression feels hopeless about life and society, leading her to take her children with her as a way to escape suffering. What are your thoughts on this case? Share your views in the comments below. This doctor was sentenced to 190 years in prison for poisoning IV bags used on patients. 10 patients were rushed to nearby emergency rooms after experiencing complications during their procedures. But what really caught officials' attention was when Melanie Casper brought home a contaminated IV bag to treat her dehydration and tragically passed away. Police reviewed hospital surveillance footage and began to suspect a doctor named Reynaldo Ortiz. During questioning, Ortiz admitted to tampering with the IV bags. His motive? He was facing disciplinary action for not following proper procedures during a surgery. As retaliation, he poisoned IV bags that other surgeons would be using. Out of the 10 casualties, Ortiz was only charged in 4 cases, but the judge considered all the allegations when deciding his sentence. Ortiz waived his right to attend the sentencing hearing. Instead, he chose to sit in another room in the courthouse to avoid facing the victims and their families. The judge ultimately sentenced him to 190 years in prison, and he will likely never be released. What are your thoughts on this case? Share them in the comments below. The old girl was harmed by her father's brother, and the enraged father killed and dismembered his sibling. After his daughter returned home from visiting her uncle, Roder GS noticed her pants were stained with blood. When he questioned her, the little girl revealed the terrible actions her uncle had done. Roder GS lost control. He drove straight to his brother's house, beat him unconscious, tied him up, and cut off his genitals, stuffing them into his mouth. His brother died from severe blood loss. Still consumed with rage, Roder GES grabbed an axe. When the brother's remains were found, his body had been chopped into pieces and stuffed into two suitcases, which were discovered floating in a lake by some fishermen. Police evidence, including Rotter G.'s fingerprints on the victim and blood found in his cart trunk, lead to his arrest. Rotter G.S. was sentenced to life in prison. What do you think about this case? As a father, it must have been nearly impossible for Rotter G.S. to stay rational, right? Do you think the sentence was fair? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
Not guilty of...
A 14-year-old girl lied about her age and engaged in an inappropriate relationship with a 19-year-old boy, leading to charges against him. In a park in Michigan, 19-year-old Zach Anderson was arrested shortly after having sexual relations with the girl and was charged with fourth-degree criminal sexual conduct. It turns out the girl's mother reported her missing, and after the police investigated, they found Zach and learned about their relationship. Zach stated he didn't know the girl was only 14. She told him she was 17 on the dating app. He insisted that he only got involved with her because of her false age claim, and the girl also admitted to lying about her age and actively participating in the relationship. During the trial, the girl's mother even spoke out, expressing that she didn't want Zach to be labeled a sex offender and believed his actions didn't constitute a crime. The girl herself wrote Zach a letter apologizing, stating she felt responsible for what happened. Despite this evidence, the judge sentenced Zach to 90 days in jail and placed him on the sex offender registry. Zach's lawyer and family argued that the punishment didn't fit the facts, and over 220,000 people signed a petition supporting him on social media. Yet, Zach was still placed on the sex offender registry for 25 years. Recently, however, a judge overturned Zach's sentence. What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments.
I'm waiting for this day for I may be able to speak from my family and speak to you!
A 30-year-old babysitter took a 9-year-old girl to a man's apartment, and the next time she was seen, she was lying lifeless by the shore. In 2014, in Florida, 9-year-old Felicia Williams went out with her babysitter, Ebony Wiley, who brought her to Granville Ritchie's apartment. Ebony left for unknown reasons, leaving Felicia alone with Ritchie. When she returned, Ritchie claimed Felicia went for a walk. Felicia never came back, and her body was later found in bushes near the Tampa River. Police arrested Ritchie after finding his DNA on Felicia's clothes and surveillance showing him driving to dump her body near the river. Cell phone records placed him at the scene during the crime. Ritchie confessed to committing adult acts against Felicia, then strangling her and disposing of her body in a suitcase to cover up the crime. Ebony initially lied to police to protect Ritchie and received 5 years of probation for perjury. Granville Ritchie was charged with murder, sexual battery, and kidnapping. Was Ebony more involved than she admitted? Share your thoughts below.
You wanna fucking take my kids from me and act like that? Fuck you and that fucking bitch!
A man went to jail for demanding that doctors continue to treat his son. Doctors at a hospital in Texas told George Pickering that his son was in a state of brain death. His son showed no brain activity, and they decided to remove life support. However, this didn't sit well with Pickering. As he watched the doctors prepare to take the equipment away, he pulled out a gun and held it to the doctor's head, threatening to shoot if they didn't treat his son. The tense standoff quickly escalated, and the police got involved, lasting 3 hours while the doctors had to perform additional tests on his son. The police couldn't convince Pickering, but miraculously, at that moment, his son raised his hand and squeezed it, showing that the boy previously declared brain dead was still alive. After this revelation, Pickering surrendered and was arrested. He was taken to court and sentenced to 11 months in prison. Remarkably, his son made a full recovery. Some people believe that threatening the doctors was an understandable reaction, while others think that using a weapon and threatening others is unacceptable in any situation. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments. A 17-year-old boy claims he stabbed his twin sister while dreaming. When police arrived, they found a knife embedded in the girl's neck. Benjamin Elliott, 17, called 911 after stabbing Megan Elliott and told the police he acted while sleepwalking. Between 2:30 and 3:00 a.m., he says he woke up to find his sister in her bedroom with a knife in her neck. After realizing he wasn't dreaming, he pulled out the knife, placed it next to the victim, turned on the bedroom light, and tried to stop the bleeding with a pillow. 7 minutes into the 911 call, prosecutors say the teen called out to his parents, who could be heard in the background. But by the time police and paramedics arrived, Megan was already unresponsive. Benjamin told detectives he hadn't been drinking, wasn't on drugs, and had never experienced sleep disturbances in the past. His lawyer stated that his client loved his sister very much and they had a close relationship. Even so, Elliot has been charged with felony murder. The teenager is being held on a $100,000 bond tonight. Do you believe Benjamin took his sister's life in an unconscious sleepwalking state? Share your thoughts in the comments.
I hope you get exactly what you deserve in prison, and you know what's gonna happen to you when you go to prison.
When he was just 15, a teenager committed inappropriate adult acts and murdered an 8-year-old girl. Now, due to new legislation, he could be released. In July 2015, in Santa Cruz, California, Adrian A.J. Gonzalez cruelly took the life of 8-year-old Maud Eisen, Maddie Middleton. He lured Maddie into his apartment, committed inappropriate acts against her, and then took her life, hiding her body in a nearby dumpster. After the police found the girl's body, they quickly arrested Gonzalez. Forensic evidence and DNA presented in court established Gonzalez's direct responsibility in the case. He was sentenced to life in prison with restrictions on his parole eligibility. However, with the new legislation in place, Gonzalez can apply for release when he turns 25. His attorneys state that he still needs to serve at least 2 more years in a juvenile detention facility to assess whether he truly no longer poses a threat to society. So what do you think about this case? Should we give him a chance to be forgiven for the mistakes he made when he was young? But who can bring that young girl back to life? Share your thoughts in the comments.
You had no right to take her from me!
A 14-year-old boy pointed a gun at a woman at a traffic light and took her life, all to impress his gang members. 14-year-old Remy Cordova was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole for shooting and killing 32-year-old Pamela Cabriales. After Cabriales had a minor traffic collision with the vehicle Cordova was in, he opened fire on her car with an AR-15 rifle. Investigations revealed that Cordova's actions were solely to impress his fellow gang members. Despite being rushed to the hospital, Cabriales was pronounced dead, leaving her life forever frozen at their Tito. She also left behind a young son. Even when Cordova was found guilty, he continued to claim his innocence. He told the victim's family in court, "I understand the pain you're feeling, but I can't take responsibility for something I didn't do." In the end, he was sentenced to life in prison as an adult. What's your take on this case? Should he have been tried as an adult? Share your thoughts in the comments. 2 immigrant men committed inappropriate adult acts against a 12-year-old girl before taking her life. 21-year-old Yojan Jose Martinez, Range Ellen 26-year-old Franklin Jose P.I.R. Ramos, both Venezuelans who recently entered the U.S., have been charged with capital murder for the killing of 12-year-old Josellen Nungare. Police discovered the girl's body under a bridge in Houston, showing horrifying injuries. Under Texas law, this case makes the 2 suspects likely candidates for the death penalty. According to her family, the 12-year-old girl ran away from home in June. She was last seen at a store in the company of the 2 suspects. Both men were under immigration monitoring status due to their legal situation and were wearing electronic ankle monitors at the time. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you think flaws in the immigration system allowed criminals to slip through? Share your views in the comments below.
It's just like, still just doesn't register. Just I can't believe it's her. And you know, it'll take some sinking in.
Assault, Marshal.
3 teenagers murdered a police officer while stealing beer, and now they're completely at a loss facing the death penalty. After a convenience store employee spotted them stealing multiple cans of beer, he quickly called the cops. Officer Philip Dale Nix arrived just in time to intercept the teen's car. But instead of stopping for the officer, the 3 young men ignored his request and pulled out their weapons, firing at him. Philip was caught off guard and fell to the ground after being shot. Even after being rushed to the hospital, he couldn't be saved. Thanks to the convenience store surveillance footage, police identified the 3 teenagers, 20-year-old Jay, Amir Foster, and 2 other suspects, Corey Blackwell and John Morrison. When Foster heard he might be facing the death penalty, he lost it, insisting, "I shot out of panic, it wasn't intentional," trying to wiggle out of the charges. Because of his outburst, the judge had to tell him to stop with the useless statements. The other 2 are also facing second-degree murder charges, looking at decades behind bars. What do you think about this case? Taking a police officer's life over a few bottles of beer, there's really no worse kind of teenager than this. 3 minors murdered their stepfather because he was engaging in inappropriate adult behavior with their 9-year-old sister. When Alejandro Travano and his brothers found out about their stepfather Quintanilla's actions, they confronted him in a trailer. After a heated argument, Quintanilla left, but the brothers and their friend Juan regrouped and tracked him down to get revenge. They ended up throwing him into their pickup truck and drove him out to the woods. A few days later, Quintanilla's body was discovered, and the 3 didn't escape the police's investigation and were arrested, with bail set at least $1 million. Even though Quintanilla had a prior criminal record for inappropriate behavior with children, it might not be relevant to this case, and the judge may not take it into account. Many people believe their actions were self-defense, that they were protecting their family, and are calling for all charges against them to be dropped. So do you think they were acting in self-defense? Should the charges be dropped? Share your thoughts in the comments. A woman was arrested for having cotton candy and was detained for over 3 months, with a judge setting her bond at $1 million. Now, she's suing Monroe County in Georgia. That day, deputies from the Monroe County Sheriff's Office pulled her over and searched her car. Deputies Cody, Mabeless, and Kevin Williams found a suspicious package and asked her what it was. She said it was cotton candy, but they didn't believe her. Due to the packaging and crystal-like features, the police decided to test the substance, leading to her being detained for over 3 months and her bond set at $1 million. However, after testing, it turned out the substance was indeed cotton candy. Although she was released, she doesn't think this is the best outcome because Monroe County hasn't taken responsibility for their mistake. During her time in custody, she missed many important events, including not being there for her daughter during her miscarriage and not seeing her when grandsons being born. She mentioned that this situation has affected her mental health and that she feels like her personality has changed for the worse. Therefore, she filed a lawsuit on Thursday against Monroe County, the 2 deputies who arrested her, and the company that manufactured the drug test. Do you support her lawsuit? Share your thoughts in the comments.
I hope you die in prison as well. You know, if this was a death penalty state, you'd be getting the chair.
His mother handed her 2 young daughters over to a man, allowing him to perform inappropriate adult acts in exchange for money. When she was sentenced to 20 years in prison, she blew a kiss to the judge. Morgan So Merlin would take her children to the home of 78-year-old Richard Pop Office, waiting in the living room while this man did disturbing things to her 5- and 6-year-old daughters. Each time, So Merlin collected $100. Her attorney argued that So Merlin had experienced similar abuse as a child, suggesting her actions might have been a result of her own trauma. In the end, So Merlin was sentenced to 20 years in prison without parole, followed by 10 years of probation. As the judge announced the sentence, So Merlin blew a kiss to the court. 78-year-old Pop Office was sentenced to life in prison with an additional 146 years. The girl's grandmother, Teresa Davidson, also pleaded guilty to child cruelty for failing to act after learning about the abuse. She was sentenced to 5 years with 1 year credited for time served and the rest to be served on probation. What's your take on this case? Why would a mother do something like this for money? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
Are you arresting me?
Yes, ma'am.
Why? I have to go get my son!
Please.
Oh my god, I have to go get my son!
A mother was arrested and now faces up to a year in jail and a $1,000 fine after her 10-year-old son was found walking alone in Mineral Bluff, Georgia. Brittany Patterson, a mother of 4, was taken into custody in front of her children after her son was spotted walking alone in Mineral Bluff, a small town with just 370 residents. According to police reports, on October 30th, Brittany left her youngest son, Soren, at home while she took her eldest son to a medical appointment. Soren later wandered into town without her knowing. Police called Brittany, returned Soren home, and expressed concern about the situation. However, later that evening, officers came back to arrest Brittany, charging her with reckless conduct for knowingly endangering the bodily safety of her son. She was booked into county jail and released on $500 bail. If convicted, Brittany could face up to a year in jail and a $1,000 fine. Her lawyer argues that Brittany acted responsibly, as the area is not dangerous. Do you think Brittany should be held responsible for her 10-year-old son walking alone? Share your thoughts in the comments.
I hope you get exactly what you deserve in prison, and you know what's gonna happen to you when you go to prison.
This is the moment and angrily confronted her niece's stepfather. 3 years ago, the girl's stepfather cruelly took the life of her 8-year-old brother, Kendrick Lee, while she and her 2 younger brothers were locked in a bedroom. She said she often heard her brother crying. One day, she snuck into the kitchen and found Kendrick no longer breathing. She immediately texted her mother for help but got no response. Her 10-year-old and 7-year-old brothers also testified in court, describing how their stepfather used his fists, feet, a remote-controlled plane, and Spider-Man toys to harm Kendrick until he stopped moving. They were forced to live in a nightmare with no food, no safety, only endless despair and the sound of their brother's cries. The girl even thought she would suffer the same fate as Kendrick until her aunt found them. Hearing her story, the aunt cried in grief, unable to understand how a mother could leave her children with someone like that. What's your take on this case? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
You kept shooting him, man! You kept shooting him!
This is the fake scene caught on surveillance. The 2 women walking arm in arm with the man, laughing, will take his life just minutes later. On May 17, 25-year-old Brian Altamirano Solana was happily walking through the halls of Caesar's Palace on the Las Vegas Strip. Shortly after, he entered a hotel room accompanied by 22-year-old Ariana Taylor and 21-year-old Erica Covington. The next day, the hotel butler found Brian lying on the floor of the room, showing no signs of life. On Brian's phone, police discovered explicit videos of the 2 women. The 2 women stayed in Brian's room for about 15 minutes. Another camera caught footage of Covington and Taylor running down the hallway, fleeing the scene. They were also carrying Brian's bag. Police quickly arrested the 2 suspects. In court, Brian's father, heartbroken, asked them, "Why did you take my son's money and then take his life?" He begged the judge to deliver justice for his son. But neither of the women apologized or showed any remorse on their faces. What do you think their sentence should be? Share your thoughts in the comments.
Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander. My
16-year-old girl denied parole after nearly 50 years in prison for shooting 11 people because she didn't like Mondays. One morning in 1979, a bloody scene unfolded at an elementary school in San Diego. Brenda Spencer stood by her bedroom window and opened fire on the school. The shooting lasted about 20 minutes. The school principal, Burton Ragg, and custodian, Mike Such-AR, were tragically killed while trying to protect the students. Brenda also shot and injured 8 students and 1 police officer. When asked by the police why she did it, Brenda coldly replied, "I don't like Mondays. This livens up the day." Brenda was prosecuted as an adult and sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Since 1993, she has been eligible to apply for parole, but has been denied release 6 times. The parole board believes that the severity of her crime and her lack of full remorse are reasons to deny her release. She will have another chance to apply for parole in 2028. It is worth noting that the gun Brenda used was a gift from her father, who was accused of neglecting her upbringing. Brenda also had a prior history of theft and drug use. Do you think she deserves parole? Should her father bear more responsibility for this tragedy? Share your thoughts in the comments.
Help, please.
A 12-year-old girl secretly called her mom during a sleepover, saying, "Mom, I feel like it's dangerous here. Please come pick me up," before hanging up. In August 2023, 57-year-old Michael Maiden had his daughter invite friends for a sleepover at his request. He took them for nails, pizza, cake, and a hot tub. Between 9 and 11 p.m., after the girls finished their hot tub session and prepared for bed, Michael made mango smoothies, insisted they use specific colored straws, and told them to finish their drinks. Shortly after, the girls felt dizzy, hot, and fell asleep except for the one who didn't drink the smoothie. She saw Michael entering the basement multiple times, even checking if the girls were breathing. She immediately called her mom, and all the parents came to pick up their kids. Tests later found benzodiazepine in the girls' systems. Michael admitted to drugging their drinks to make them asleep by 11 p.m. Charged with felony coercion and controlled substance ingestion, he was sentenced to 2 years in prison. What's your take on this case? Share your thoughts. An 11-year-old girl was kidnapped by a serial abductor on her way home from school, but thanks to her courage and smarts, she managed to escape. On May 1, 2001, 11-year-old Leah Henry was abducted. but her bravery led to her rescue and the capture of a serial kidnapper. Leah lived in Houston, Texas, and was lured into a car by 40-year-old Gary Dale Cox while walking home after school. She endured 5 days of captivity in a remote cabin. During her time in captivity, Leah never lost hope of getting away. Finally, she found her chance when Cox was driving. She managed to hide in his car and, after sneaking out, found a police officer. The police not only rescued Leah but also got information from her that helped them locate Cox's hideout. Unfortunately, Cox chose to take his own life before facing justice. It's reported that before abducting Leah, Cox had committed several other kidnapping offenses, including the abduction of a 9-year-old girl named Nikki and an 11-year-old girl named Lisa. Although both were released, these experiences left deep emotional scars on them. Now, Leah is a marine biologist and shares her story to raise awareness about child safety. How can we better protect our kids from predators like this? Share your thoughts in the comments.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
A mother instructed her boyfriend to carry out inhumane acts against her 5-year-old daughter, including forcing her to eat dog poop and stuffing urine-soaked socks in her mouth. In February 2022, when police received a call and arrived at Katrina Mendozer's home, they reported that the 5-year-old girl looked like something out of a horror movie. Her daughter, Mercedes Lesoya, had severe swelling all over her body, visible bruises, scratches, and cuts on her face, and noticeable hair and nail loss. Shortly after being taken to the hospital, she was pronounced unresponsive. The police immediately arrested the girl's mother, Katrina Mendoza, but she blamed everything on her boyfriend, Jose Ruiz, trying to shift the responsibility. Katrina claimed that when her daughter screamed and fought back, Ruiz would verbally abuse her, and that he once stuffed a urine-soaked sock in her mouth. This horrific behavior was confirmed by the coroner, who found that the girl had endured weeks of suffering. However, Ruiz pleaded not guilty, while Katrina Mendoza was sentenced to 45 years in prison. A few months later, Ruiz was re-indicted in the 187th District Court. What do you think about this case? It's hard to imagine a mother could do such things to her own child. Share your thoughts in the comments. A 24-year-old wife hired a hitman to kill her husband in order to get his money, even though he was 16 years older than her. Joyce Cohen, 24, married 40-year-old millionaire Stan Cohen in 1974. After more than a decade of marriage, their relationship was falling apart, and they were close to divorce. In the midst of this, Joyce called 911, claiming that 3 intruders had killed her husband. While police couldn't catch the killer right away, a few months later, they arrested Frank C.U. Carroll Lowe in connection with another burglary. During questioning, Frank revealed that Joyce had hired him and 2 other men to kill her husband. As a result, Joyce and the other 2 men were also arrested. Frank struck a deal and served 2 years, while the other 2 men pleaded guilty, receiving sentences of 40 years and 30 years, respectively. They are both now free. Joyce went to trial, and the prosecution argued that her husband had threatened to divorce her, which led her to eliminate him. She was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. What do you think about this case? Going from marriage to murder, maybe that's why so many people are afraid of marriage.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
A mother drowned her 3 young children and then fled in a stolen car, but ultimately avoided criminal charges. The 3 children were just 6 months, 2 years, and 3 years old. On April 10, 2021, in the Reseda neighborhood of Los Angeles, 30-year-old Liliana Carrillo was accused of drowning her 3 young children in her apartment. The children's grandmother was the one who called the police. After committing the crime, Carrillo fled the scene and later carried out a carjacking in Bakersfield, Northern California. She was eventually arrested by police in Tulare County. Carrillo admitted to killing her children, claiming she did it to protect them from the evils of the outside world. Police discovered that she had a history of mental health issues, including depression. In the end, the judge ruled that, based on clear evidence from psychiatric experts, her actions were not driven by a rational state of mind. She avoided criminal charges but was ordered to undergo long-term treatment in a psychiatric hospital. Some people argue if she was truly mentally unstable, how was she able to plan a carjacking and attempt to cover up her crime? What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments below. A mother turned her daughter over to the police after finding out she killed someone for $60. Police responded to a call and arrived at the scene to find a man with a gunshot wound who had already passed away. Shortly after, they released surveillance footage of the suspect on social media. The next day, the suspect's mother came to the police station and turned her daughter in. 26-year-old Connie yet Hayes reportedly met a man at a gas station. The man offered her $60 in exchange for some fun time. Hayes told the police she never planned to actually go through with it. Instead, she shot the man, took his cash, and left the scene on foot. Desperate for money, Hayes said she spent $47 of it on hot wings for herself and her boyfriend after the shooting. It wasn't until the next day, when her mother saw the surveillance footage, that she brought her daughter to the police station. Hayes is now facing murder charges. Do you think her mother did the right thing by turning her in? Let me know in the comments. A 73-year-old Illinois landlord stabbed a 6-year-old Palestinian boy 26 times, calling the family infested rats. 73-year-old Joseph Zuba, who rented out rooms in his Plainfield, Illinois home to 6-year-old Wadhi Al-Fayumi and his mother, Hainan Shahid, both Palestinian Americans, suddenly told them on October 7 to move out, saying they weren't welcome anymore. He even threatened them, saying they needed to die, and had previously called the police, referring to Wadhi and his mother as infested rats. Zuba forced his way into their room, pinned Hainan down, broke her teeth, and attacked her with a knife, all while her son watched in horror. Hainan managed to escape, locking herself in the bathroom to call 911. But then the nightmare turned to Wadhi. Zuba turned his knife on the boy, stabbing him 26 times, leaving the knife in his body before walking away. Even though Wadhi was rushed to the hospital, he tragically didn't survive. What do you think about this case? A child doesn't get to choose where they come from. What did he ever do to deserve this? Leave your thoughts in the comments.
An 8-year-old girl was sexually assaulted by her father's brother, and the father ended up killing and dismembering his own brother. When the 8-year-old daughter came back home from her uncle's house, Rodriguez noticed her pants were soaked in blood. The little girl told him that her uncle had hurt her. Curious and out of his mind, Rodriguez immediately headed to his brother's house. As soon as his brother opened the door, Rodriguez attacked him and beat him unconscious. He then tied up his brother and tortured him. Eventually, Rodriguez grabbed an axe and dismembered his brother's body. The head, arms, legs, they were all stuffed into the suitcases, which he dumped into a lake. A few days later, hikers found the dismembered remains floating in the water. Police found Rodriguez's fingerprints on the victim, as well as blood in the trunk of his car, leading to his arrest. Rodriguez was sentenced to life in prison. What do you think about this case? Is Rodriguez a criminal or a hero? Should he be released without charges? Share your take in the comments below.
Not guilty of...
A mother was thrown behind bars after she burned her daughter's rapist to death, right after he got out of prison. Maria del Carmen Garcia's daughter Veronica was just a 13-year-old kid when Antonio Cosme, this sick monster, held her at knife point and took her innocence back in 1998. The creep got slapped with a 9-year prison sentence. Then in June 2005, while he was out on parole, he ran into Maria at a bus stop. Instead of showing any remorse, this piece of work had the nerve to mock Maria, smirking while asking how her daughter was doing. Then he just waltzed into a bar like nothing happened. I mean, what mother could keep it together after that, right? Maria, completely losing it with rage, fear, and hysteria after his taunting, made a beeline for the nearest gas station and grabbed herself a can of fuel. She stormed into that bar, dumped the gas all over Cosme's head, and lit that rapist up. Cosme ended up with burns over 90 of his body and kicked the bucket in the hospital a few days later. Maria got hit with a 9.5-year sentence, which they knocked down to 5.5 years after appeal. So get this, a guy who rapes a 13-year-old girl gets 9 years, but a mother fighting for justice for her daughter has to rot in prison for 5.5 years. Is this what we're calling justice these days?
Coulter Peterson and Jason Decker, both 16, were close friends who spent hours together playing video games and chatting. But their bond turned deadly in February when their shared frustrations over a 14-year-old classmate, Desiree Turner, escalated into a calculated attempt on her life in Smithfield, Utah. According to court testimony, Coulter grew irritated with Desiree's frequent social media messages and shared his annoyance with Jason. The pair began discussing ways to get rid of her. Initially, they planned to slit her throat with a knife, believing it would be quieter, but Coulter brought a gun as a backup. Their plot came to fruition on February 16, just days after Valentine's Day. Coulter convinced Desiree to meet him at a secluded canal under the pretense of selling her a knife. Jason accompanied him, which surprised Desiree when she arrived. The three chatted briefly before Desiree received a text from her mother asking her to come home. As she turned to leave, Coulter shot her in the back of the head. Believing her dead, the boys searched her backpack, stealing her phone, iPod, and $55 in cash before fleeing. Hours later, after frantic searching by her family and community, Desiree was found face down in a field, covered in blood but miraculously alive. She was rushed to the hospital, where she underwent critical surgeries. Despite the bullet remaining lodged in her head, Desiree survived and continues her long recovery. The boys were arrested after investigators traced Desiree's phone records and found a bullet casing in Jason's possession. Both admitted their roles, with Coulter claiming Jason encouraged the plan. Now, they face charges of aggravated attempted murder, robbery, and obstruction of justice. Do you think they should be tried as adults?
Not guilty of...
This is the story of a grandfather who was brought to trial for protecting his granddaughter. 12-year-old Emily met a 45-year-old man, named Jamal, through an online video game. Using manipulation and deceit, Jamal coerced Emily into sending him personal photos and later threatened her to visit his apartment. Emily's grandfather, Robert, noticed her unusual behavior and grew concerned. Acting swiftly, he accompanied Emily to Jamal's apartment to confront him. In the ensuing altercation, Robert physically intervened to defend his granddaughter. After ensuring Emily was safe downstairs, Robert returned to the apartment alone. When he came back down, he calmly instructed Emily to contact the authorities. By the time law enforcement arrived, Jamal was found unresponsive, and Robert was taken into custody. After reviewing the case, the jury found Robert not guilty on the grounds of self-defense and defense of others. The court determined that Robert acted reasonably and out of a genuine need to protect his granddaughter from imminent harm, and that his actions were not premeditated or malicious. What is your opinion on this case? Should Robert be acquitted? Please share your thoughts in the comment section.
You said you wanted to kill her! Your own work.
Chad Dorman, the man who took the lives of his 3 sons, has finally been sentenced. If you haven't heard about this case before, what follows might be hard to stomach. One day after Chad came home from work, his strange behavior scared his 3 sons, 7-year-old Clayton, 4-year-old Hunter, and 3-year-old Chase. Worried about his state, his wife decided to take a nap with the kids and Chad. After a while, Chad woke up, went to the safe, took out a gun, and committed a horrific act against Hunter. The boy's mother screamed for the other 2 children to run. Chad's stepdaughter heard the commotion, rushed into the room, grabbed Clayton, and ran outside. But Chad was right behind them. When Clayton fell, Chad ended his life. The stepdaughter then picked up 3-year-old Chase and tried to escape, but Chad quickly caught up. He ordered her to put Chase down and attempted to shoot him, but the gun misfired her. Little Chase ran toward his mother, who was desperately trying to save Hunter, but Chad caught up to him and cruelly took his life as well. Later, Chad struggled with his wife over the gravely injured Hunter, and in the end, he pointed the gun at Hunter's head and ended his life. The 3 boys could never have imagined that the person who gave them life would be the one to take it away. Chad was initially facing the death penalty, but as part of a plea deal, he admitted to his crimes and was sentenced to 3 life terms without the possibility of parole. But can this sentence truly bring justice to those innocent lives lost? For such a cold-blooded act, is simply taking away his freedom really enough?
Julian Hernandez was in the legal custody of his mother when he vanished from Alabama in August 2002. At just 5 years old, he was taken by his biological father, Bobby Hernandez, who fabricated new identities for both of them and started a life in Ohio. For 13 years, Julian's mother searched tirelessly, listing him in the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children database. The truth came to light in 2015 when an 18-year-old Julian, applying for college, discovered his social security number didn't match his name. A school counselor helped uncover his real identity, leading to a call to Alabama authorities. FBI agents confirmed that Julian had been missing since 2002, and his father was subsequently arrested. Bobby Hernandez faced charges of aggravated identity theft, for which he was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Additional charges related to parental kidnapping were considered but complicated by the fact that he was Julian's biological father and there was no prior termination of parental rights. Despite his actions, authorities noted that Julian was well cared for and excelled academically during his time with his father. How do you view this case? Should Julian Hernandez return to his mother's care? Why wasn't his father searched for after his disappearance? Share your thoughts in the comments.